our IT guru. Okay, wonderful. Good afternoon. This is a meeting of the Joint Legislative Management Committee, which is a committee made up of House members and senators. And I will call the meeting to order. I'm Senator Becca Ballant, the chair of this committee this session. And I want to welcome everyone here. It's an amazing feeling to be in the State House together and to see all of you. And I don't know how long it will last, so we're going to enjoy it. And I just want to publicly thank all of the people here in the building who have continued to make our work possible. So Kevin Moore with IT department, Janet Miller, our Sergeant of Arms, certainly Chief Romei, and all of the folks in the House and Senate Clerk's office, all the people who continue to do the work here at the State House, even when we're not here, and of course, Legislative Council who attend all of our meetings and keep us on the straight and narrow, as it were. So I just want to remind everybody about the power and the authority that this committee has. And one of the things that we did in the Capitol bill this past session was we empowered the Legislative Advisory Committee on the State House to review and make recommendations on any space and design proposals for the State House. So just to remind folks, we don't know what January is going to look like. We have a lot of things in flux in terms of what is going to happen with the pandemic, obviously, but we are moving ahead, trying to figure out how the People's House will be open. And this is going to be a meeting in which we're dealing with sort of the next part of getting ready for that. So the FY22 budget appropriated $2.5 million from the coronavirus relief funds for costs incurred due to the response to the pandemic. And we're going to fund preparations for the 2022 legislative session that are going to be consistent with what we decide here are recommendations. So for those of you who may be new to the building, I'm very happy to see you, Arlene, here, our new HR person. So we have a Joint Legislative Management Committee. We also have a Joint Rules Committee. We have a Senate Rules Committee. We have a House Rules Committee. And so, and we also have this advisory committee on the State House, which is going to be informing our work. So just to let everybody know, it is government, it is messy, but it means that a lot of people have a hand in making decisions, which is how it should be. So the Legislative Advisory Committee, and I specifically want to thank Senator Benning and Representative Alice Emmons for their work on the advisory committee. They've been continuing their work to develop a series of recommendations for the 2022 legislative session in anticipation of us being back into the State House. In the process, this advisory committee recommended two expenses that should be expedited to get projects underway and money out the door, as it were, so that we can get ready and prepared for January. So first, we're going to hear from Representative Alice Emmons. She is the chair of House Institutions. She also serves on the advisory committee, and she has been sitting in on our meetings as well, although she isn't a member of this committee, certainly has a lot of experience and expertise to bring to this. So we'll hear from Alice Emmons, then we will hear, she will speak to IT equipment and facility improvements, and then we'll hear from Kevin Moore, Director of IT, and Janet Miller, Sergeant of Arms, afterwards. So welcome. Thank you, Representative Emmons, for making the time to be with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. And it is great. It's great to be back and see all of you. Some I have seen on a pretty regular basis, and for others, this is great. I also want to thank you for meeting in advance of our August 15th report. There's three of us here that are on the advisory committee, myself, Senator Benning, and Representative Ansel, and spending most of our summer working on really trying to get things in place for us to return in January. And we know whatever is being proposed or recommended going forward beyond today, it's all in flux because we don't know what's going to happen with COVID between now and then, but we're working really hard for our members to come back and work in our State House, as well as keeping the State House open and available to Vermonters. And we're trying to achieve that in the safest manner we can. And so in that vein, one of the pieces is encouraging folks to really avail themselves of technology. And we are proposing that the standing committees, which we will also recommend that they meet in the State House, that those standing committees, there'd be some live stream capability. And in terms of that occurring, and talking with Kevin Moore, there's a need on his end to expedite the process in terms of freeing up the money so that he can go out and start purchasing the equipment that would be needed. What you're seeing here is some of what would need to be purchased, plus all the wiring and all the backup for the IT and the AV. Another portion of his request will also include AV equipment and IT equipment for our House chamber, for our proceedings in the House and the Senate chambers. So these are major decisions that need to be made. As an offshoot of that, I just want to put this on the table for you folks to start processing. We're not going to say as the advisory committee what policies and procedures are put in place for live streaming of committees or our proceedings in the chambers. That will be a recommendation that those policies and procedures need to be developed and established. And where it goes from there to our rules committees, joint rules, but something will need to be in place prior to us live streaming on a regular basis. So that will be part of Kevin's proposal that he's going to present to you for money. It's in the ballpark of about 900,000, 500,000 for the two chambers, 400,000 for the committee rooms. Now the committee rooms, what we're looking at is more, it's not just more on the House side than the Senate side. We have figured there's about 6 committees that need to move. There's Senate Ag in the Senate, and then there's 5 committees in the House that are in small committee rooms. There's 2 in the 30s, there's 3 in the 40s. So our proposal is that room 9, which is coat room, room 10, room 11, Ethan Allen room, and the lounge for FY22 session, it's a temporary basis, are converted to committee rooms. And then that frees up those smaller rooms in the 30s and 40s to be used in a different manner, either as a replacement to the lounge, as a place legislators can go.
So Representative Emmons, if I could, just because I know some people will watch this after, if you could explain, I think those of us in the State House know when you're referring to the 30s and the 40s, if you could just explain to folks what you're referring to.
Those are there's 2 committee rooms in the 30s. There's where House Agriculture meets now and House Corrections and Institutions Committee. Those rooms would be available. And in the 40s, there'd be 3 committee rooms. There'd be House Energy and Technology, House Natural Resources and Energy, and House Housing, General Military Housing. And as I don't want to get into much into the weeds.
Absolutely.
But we'll figure out as we go forward. The advisory committee will not make a decision who's going to go where. We just know that those rooms will be empty. And then how the committees are divvied up and what space is some other folks' decision. So when you get into equipment and live streaming that Kevin's going to be talking about is for some of our own standing committee rooms that are available for committee meetings, as well as these additional rooms of rooms 9, 10, 11, Ethan Allen, and the lounge. So there's about 400,000 for that and 500,000 for the chamber. The other piece here that we will be hearing from our Sergeant at Arms, Miller, at the end of the session, we worked out with the administration an agreement that the building 2 Aiken, which is at the top of Aiken Ave, the department has, buildings and general services, that's been their space, that's been their house, that's been their property, the commissioner is there. And behind 2 Aiken is 4 Aiken, which also has BTS folks there. We made an agreement with the administration that we as a legislative body would have 2 Aiken and 4 Aiken for our use. BGS would move to the 5th floor of 133 State Street. So that has occurred. The question now is what is needed for renovations in 2 Aiken? And that is all being processed with our Sergeant at Arms, with the respective bodies as well as BGS to figure out what do we need to do just in the interim. And long-term, we're not there yet. But there are some electrical upgrades. There's some cosmetics in terms of painting and carpet work. We have not decided as the advisory committee what the full scope of a project will be for 2 Aiken at this point. There's a lot of conversations that need to occur in terms of who will be there ultimately. But there may be some folks who are there on a temporary basis for this upcoming session. And there is some upgrades there. There also may need to be some upgrades as well for furniture within our committee rooms, our new committee rooms as well. So the Sergeant at Arms is putting, we'll be requesting about $750,000 for those. So that's where we are. We really appreciate you folks coming together in advance of our report because we don't know what the supply chain is there for equipment, and the sooner we can get started on this, particularly the IT, will ensure that Kevin has the time to do the work that's needed for us to be back here in January. So that's where we are at this point, and our report will be coming out in 2 weeks. It's our goal.
So before I ask the committee if they have questions, I just want to sort of remind folks our charge today, which is we're here really to authorize spending on the IT equipment and the facility improvements. So we're going to try to keep our questions to those areas specifically, as Representative Emmons said, and I'm sure the speaker and I will reiterate this at the end, again, that there are decisions that this committee makes, there are decisions that the Rules Committee makes, and so we're trying to keep ourselves on task today about, we'll hear more from Kevin and from Janet about the proposals for these expenses, but I want to keep us focused on that. So are there questions for Representative Emmons before we hear from our other two folks who are giving testimony? Yes, Representative Leclerc.
Thank you. Good afternoon. These are easy questions. You said the 5 rooms that are deemed to be too small. Is it the ventilation issues that are really driving that, precipitating that problem, or is there other things that are coming into play? I mean, are we still dealing with some COVID space and distance issues, or is it?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think, and I really want to appreciate what Representative Ansel said to our advisory committee, probably one of our second, maybe our third meeting. The question is our role, is the role to have people feel okay in the building, or is the role to have the building safe? And I think that really puts it in context. I think the advisory committee is falling in the middle of that people will feel okay in their workspace. You're not going to make this building safe. No building is going to be safe from COVID. You make it as comfortable as you can, and at a point where legislators can do their work in a committee room that they feel comfortable in and that is not overcrowded. So those committee rooms are pretty small. If you look even at seating capacity, there's not much seating capacity in those committee rooms once you've gotten the committee members in there. So it's balancing all of that, that you're not cramming a lot of people into these small rooms. So if you put those committees into another room, and then those committees that have a higher workload or they have some volatile issues that are coming up, they could move into the larger rooms. So there'd be a balance there.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Is there an expectation that incorporating technology into what we do going forward will help alleviate some of those concerns?
That's part of the conversation. The question, it's an unknown. We really don't know what will occur once the legislative session begins. We're assuming all the members will want to be here. We don't know that, but we're assuming that, but there would be availability. If a member is sick, we're going to recommend you don't come in the building, you access it through Zoom, as we did. There could be situations in the public where folks have a long distance to travel, and Zoom is a real opportunity for folks to avail themselves of state government and a voice. They could Zoom in. So that's being incorporated in the discussions. We just don't know what the lay of the land is going to be. So we're making those assumptions, but you know what assume means. I think it's just, we just have to open it up in January and see how it plays out. We'll be ready for all the venues.
Thank you.
Senator Madden.
How involved is the press? Are they asking for more access to the rooms, or how?
You know, I'm going to also lean to the other two members who are on the advisory committee. We discussed this quite a bit. And the press, we want to make sure the press is available to our work. Now, how that happens on their end, they could physically be in the building or they could do it by Zoom. I must say, in all the meetings we've had of the advisory committee, we started meeting, I think, the middle of June. We've been meeting every week since the middle of June. Every Tuesday afternoon, we've been meeting. And also a member of the Justice Oversight Committee. And we had our first in-person meeting here about a month ago. Not one press person has shown up at any of those. They're all watching us either on live stream or a few days later on YouTube. And then they write the story. So what's going to happen? I don't know. I'm surprised they haven't been in the building for some of our deliberations.
Follow up, Senator
No,
Madden.
it's fine, thanks.
Wondering if either Representative Ansel or Senator Benning have anything they wish to add. Not, you don't have to, but I know you both have put in many hours, and I just want to acknowledge that. And if there are things you want to contribute, please jump in. So Representative Ansel.
First, I want to say it's been a really good process, and want to thank Alice for the leadership she's shown, which is dealing with a lot of really difficult issues. One of the related issues that we've talked about but haven't made a recommendation on is whether we should have capacity limits in the committee rooms, and if we do, how we go about enforcing those. And the question that Senator Mazza asked about press, the hypothetical is if the committee room is at capacity and a member of the press wants to come in, and how you go about accommodating that. And, you know, I think we are anticipating that the people who work in the building, whether they're press or lobbyists or legislators or staff or whoever they are going to be flexible and try to accommodate the concerns that we have. It's not going to be perfect. And if we're seriously threatened with COVID, none of these things are going to work. I think what Representative Emmons said is absolutely correct. We can't keep people safe from COVID if COVID is surging again. There's nothing we can do to protect against that.
So just to echo, I appreciate Representative Emmons' leadership on the committee. It's been a wonderful experience. Hopefully next Tuesday is not going to be as long as last Tuesday. But there are really two things that are critical for this committee to know. First, access via some form of streaming is important, but it doesn't happen overnight. And that supply chain question of how you order equipment comes long before you actually go to install it. And Kevin is really up against the gun trying to make sure he orders things that have to be installed and has time to install them before January. The other issue is COVID. We cannot make this building safe for 188 plus all the attendees because it just doesn't have that kind of space for 6 feet of social distance. We can make it more comfortable. Part of that involves the HVAC system, which is in a medium-term conversation, not the immediate conversation, because there has to be things done to the building that we just haven't got ready to go yet. The other part of that is any alterations that you make have to come with the same planning problems, the same contract problems, RFP problems. It doesn't happen overnight. What we do need immediately, however, is for this committee to make a decision that we're going to order the IT equipment necessary to get us moving forward, and for 2 and 4 Aiken to be revised for the short term to allow people to come in and work in that space.
I think too, we have to keep in the back of our minds as we roll this out over the next couple of weeks and when we come back with our final recommendations. It's going to take a lot of work to help our colleagues come along and understand decisions that have been made or will be made over the next couple of months. It's going to be a heavy lift, and we're all going to be operating in a different manner, in a different venue than we have before. There maybe need some time to really work with our respective chairs, to really learn a new way of operating, and also really helping our colleagues realize why some decisions are being made why they're being made. And that's going to take some time on all of our parts, because on the surface, something may seem to be very simple. Why didn't you do this?
Sure.
Or why aren't we doing this? And when you start peeling that layer off the onion, you got more layers going on the onion. And I think we really will have to spend some time bringing our colleagues up to speed.
An excellent point. So if there aren't any other questions for Representative Emmons, I'm going to invite Kevin Moore, who is the head of our IT department, up to present to us his needs in his shop. And thank you for being here, Kevin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. For the record, Kevin Moore, Director of IT. You should have a memo handy. It was posted to the website. I believe I circulated it. You probably got more than once from a couple of other people. But hopefully you have it. If you don't, let me know. I'll switch your tax route for you. So I'll try to be as high level as you want. I'm happy to go into whatever detail you would like. And we can answer questions on the fly or at the end. But I appreciate the comments of the folks that were on, the senators and representatives on the advisory committee. Time is really the concern here. Time is the absolute most critical concern from our perspective on trying to make sure that we can meet majority January 5th, if I remember the date correctly. The supply chain issues are still very real as far as trying to get equipment here. A couple of vendors that we've worked with over the last several months to try to wrap our heads around potential solutions are also experiencing supply chain issues. The displays that you see in this room, we can't buy these anymore. We standardized, we bought good ones, they're great, we tested them, now we have to ship product lines again. And so it's an incredible challenge trying to keep up with the changing landscape, if you will, of supply chains. What we're looking to do is twofold. First, it's fitting up the existing committee rooms with technology similar to what you see in this space. It's not always going to be the same. Each room is very unique in how we have to approach it. We have different audio issues. We have different video issues, we had lighting concerns, there are acoustical issues within each space, the angles where people are sitting. There's a lot of detail to really consider each committee room space. And then when you start trying to scale those solutions to a chamber, that chamber on its own is a challenge. And then scale it to the house chamber, it becomes enormous. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to use and leverage existing state contracts for the committee room spaces. The math says we need about $400,000, including contingency, to make sure that we can fit up these spaces. With similar technology, make sure you have enough screens, make sure you have the proper quality cameras, make sure you have the cables, the microphones, everything that's necessary in order to accomplish video conferencing and live streaming as determined by policy. That's the biggest thing. We're not trying to set policy, we're just making the product available.
You're giving us options.
Giving options, absolutely. And it will really be a flexible solution. So anything that we've looked at, we've tried to look at it from a couple different perspectives. What if it doesn't work in the space that we have? Where else could we use it? How else could we use it? And so we're making sure that we have an additional option for that equipment should policy change and evolve over the next several months. Then you get to the chambers. The chambers are a completely different discussion. It's not something we have internal capacity to deal with. And if you refer back to prior testimony from several months ago, my preferred process is an RFP. I would really prefer to send this out to RFP. Best case scenario, given the history of RFPs in the legislature, is 4 to 8 weeks. We don't have 4 to 8 weeks on top of our existing timeline. In the RFP process, I would have suggested a simplified bid process. Best case scenario, 2 to 4 weeks. We don't have an additional 2 to 4 weeks. We're really up against the wire at this point in time with the supply chain. So I'm asking, reluctantly so, for the authority to enter into a sole source contract for the chamber projects. We have a Vermont-based company that we've been working with who are highly professional, AV professionals. They have a pretty good resume as far as the size organizations. They support other state entities within Vermont. They support other states, court systems, other big city hall type of infrastructure throughout the multiple state area. So they're used to this scale. And they have the backing, the staff, and the assurances to get to the end results. They're still incredibly worried about the timeline and the supply chain. So reluctantly, we're looking at a sole source contract of up to $500,000. Again, these numbers have contingency built into them. So our hope is to stay away from that capacity and to be able to return money and to make sure that all of these systems are flexible. I'm happy to go into detail to whatever extent you'd like, or just take questions and go from there.
Representative Ansel.
Question, I should know the answer to this, but I don't. Are you doing fit up on the rooms that we're not going to use for committees up in the 30s and 40s?
So we are anticipating some level of fit up for those spaces, not to the same scope. We look at those as potentially either lounge style workspaces is how we're envisioning them, or just large conference rooms. They don't require the same level of technology integration.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Representative Leclerc.
So it sounds like to me that most of what we're talking about is basically the hardware to do what we're looking to do. Is it going to require much in the renovation aspect to the State House as far as, I don't know if renovation is the right word, but are we going to have to be ripping out walls, putting wiring or anything anywhere?
No. So if you look at this room as, again, an example, we look down at the floor, we have surface run cables. We have used tripods in spaces where we can't mount infrastructure. We're also looking at it as we're learning. We're still learning in this space. We want to make sure we understand what angles work the best before we get into mounting stuff. If we're talking about the Senate end of the building, we have to mount equipment to the wall. There's not enough space for a tripod. And so we have to put a display up on the wall. We have to be careful about where that goes for a variety of reasons. In the House side, we'd be looking at taking down some whiteboards that people are familiar with the short throw projectors, and replacing those spaces with those larger screens. There's existing conduit in those spaces that we could leverage if necessary. The Senate's a little bit more of a challenge. There's some.
Don't I know it?
Some around the baseboard of those spaces. But we're going to have to be creative in how we get wires from A to B and make sure we don't introduce tripping hazards. make sure that we don't have any kind of issue with the equipment setup. But we are not looking at any substantive building changes or modifications whatsoever.
Thank you. Well, first off, thank you for all the research you've done. This is very thorough, and I just appreciate the work that went into prepare this and to look at all of our options. I know everyone's trying to figure out how to navigate this space. In this timeline, does this include time for us to practice and train on the equipment as well?
We are going to do everything possible to allow that. We are going to be testing while integrating, building the airplane while we're flying it, so to speak, just due to the timeline. My goal at this point in time is to try to hit something around the all legislative briefing we're familiar with in the House chamber, and maybe use that as the big test prior to the start of session. But we will certainly be testing it thoroughly beforehand in every way that we can think of, with as many people as we can get in the room too.
Thank you. Senator Kitchell.
Thank you, Kevin. People have commented on what an amazing job the Vermont legislature has done to keep our work going. And obviously, a lot of people in this room are responsible for that and what you've done here. So basically, you want, the money's been appropriated. So what you're asking for is our approval to authorize expenditure of the 500 and the 400,000 for a total of 900,000, and give you permission to enter into a sole source contract for the work in the chamber.
Correct.
If that's correct, I'm willing to make that motion.
Thank you, Senator.
Do I have a second? Second? Any more discussion, questions? So Senator Kitchell has moved to approve spending up to $400,000 to fit up the committee rooms with AV technology and approve a sole source contract up to $500,000 to fit up the House and Senate chambers. If there are no further questions, I will call the roll.
Did you get a second?
I did. Representative Ansel, thank you. Representative Leclerc,
Yes.
Senator Mazza,
Yes.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
Representative Ansel,
Yes.
Senator Benny,
Yes.
Representative Colson,
Yes.
and I also vote in the affirmative. And that is 8-0. Thank you. And Kevin, as Senator Kitchell just said, we could not have done what we did last year without you and your team. And the nimbleness that you showed under incredibly stressful circumstances was truly incredible. So I know I speak for everyone here. We know we couldn't have done our jobs without you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I certainly want to make sure that we put most of it on my team. I have an
Understood.
incredible team. Thank you so
Understood.
much.
Thank you, Kevin. Janet Miller, Sergeant of Arms. Come on up.
Come on. Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Janet Miller, Sergeant at Arms. Nice to see all of you. So as you heard from Representative Emmons, that we are requesting as Sergeant of Arms the approval of $750,000 spending authority for preseason facility needs to meet the legislative priorities. Unfortunately, I don't have as many costs incurred, and I will explain why at this time. But so we have a few projects now that are under review with several pending pieces for most of them. So I can discuss what I know and where we're trying to get to. But one of the pending projects that we have, first off, is a single-use bathroom in the State House. And this is dependent on sewage pathways and getting that scoped out to see where the placement of the bathroom could be. And so that's underway. We've got a lot of folks that I'm working with that are on vacation. They have to coordinate with an electrician, with an excavator, on all types of things. So that's to bring all these things together to give me an estimate is taking a little bit of time. We also have the space fit up for an area where we're going to put the coat room, and that's also determined by where the bathroom's going to go. So we may have to put up a wall or something like that. So that's all pending on one other, the domino effect, as I like to call it. And those are the projects, the main projects in the State House right now. We haven't really gotten into any of the furnishings of what we might do to when we decide, you decide where people are going to be, what the desk configurations, and if we can move present desks from other places, we might still be able to do that as well to cut your costs. And then the other piece is in the 2 Aiken. And the first project there is to have some immediate office space needs that we do need. And we're waiting for an estimate on that piece as well, because it's painters, electricians, swipe access, so all of those things. And the second project in the 2 Aiken is, of course, we're looking at some electrical upgrades for whatever the future may hold at 2 Aiken, whoever may go there. There's an understanding that there's some things that need to be done. So we're waiting on estimates there, floor by floor, so we can start with one floor. First floor is okay, third floor is okay, second floor is a little more challenging and may cost more money. So we're getting some estimates based on the floor, so we can see that what money we might be able to use to get all of this accomplished.
Janet, is 2 Aiken the building that still had the knob and tube in it?
Yes.
Okay.
I heard that right.
And is energized?
What's that?
Is it energized?
What do you mean by that?
In other words,
It's just being electric.
flowing through it?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes, they're still using knob and tube.
Yes.
I'd say this is sort of ironic for me. The department that's supposed to have oversight of things in the state.
It is true.
Being into the space, having to fix all sorts, and knob and tubing, I mean, as a private sector person,
The Culver's.
that is absolutely.
Cobbler's house. I mean, the carpenter's house.
Yeah.
Yes,
I just find it amazing.
whatever. Yeah,
Having that conversation.
yes, yes.
It's hard to suggest that that's not a appropriate expenditure.
Yeah, you're right. It's just, I'm amazed that we're making it now.
Yeah, right.
Thing that should have been dealt with decades ago. Okay.
Questions or additional comments from members of the committee? Any?
Well, I just,
Sure.
of the 750, I mean, do you have an earmark of what you're looking to spend on the State House versus 2 and 4?
We don't.
Okay.
I don't right now. I will tell you that in my proposal, I will give you estimates with every month to tell you where we are.
I have a question.
Yes.
When the legislature is using space like the Joint Fiscal Office and now 2 Aiken, which has got great potential, it's a beautiful building, that any of the necessary capital improvements are funded through the legislative budget as opposed to BGS? I'm just asking for clarification in terms of we're appropriating out of money that I'm just wondering, is this traditionally the way building improvement is done for the legislature that we funded out of our budget,
I
or?
don't think so, because
Representative Emmons or our joint fiscal officer either. So Representative Emmons.
We do it both ways.
Okay.
It depends on the scope of the project.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it comes out of BGS's major maintenance, which is our capital budget.
Right.
Or sometimes it's a specific line item in our capital budget for the buildings.
Okay.
So when we painted the Pink Lady, that was a number of years ago, that was out of their major maintenance, and then they needed, it wasn't done appropriately, we had to redo it, so we added more money to the capital bill to help them.
Thank you.
So it works.
It just precipitated a question about, so it's
And I
a
would say
combination.
it is a combination. Sometimes it does come out of the budget, but we've done it. So it's all.
But their budget comes from us anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all the
They'll raise
the
the request.
same.
For money.
Representative Colson.
Thank you, Janet. Does the 750,000 include a contingency line for that amount?
contingent on what we're going to spend here.
Or is there any play with that number, or is that?
I mean, we may not spend that much, or we may
It's up to, correct?
come back and ask for a little bit more, depending.
Okay.
And I would come here to ask this committee.
Follow up, Representative Colson.
I'm fine.
Okay, Representative
And I just want to underscore that it's 2.5 million of CRF money that has been appropriated for this purpose. So if we approve both of these, which I support doing, there's 900,000 remaining. And I guess my question is, do we have a plan? Do we have a need for that 900,000? What's that going to go for?
Right now, this is what I have on my plate right now. And I don't know, I mean, I think with all these improvements, electricity costs, as you know, it's going to be up there. And if it's something we look like we could go a little bit further and get more of the project done, I assume that we
Come back.
come and ask for some more.
We didn't spend it all.
The first year.
Do we lose?
Oh, in terms of the appropriate, because this was the recommendation to us at the time was to appropriate the 2.5. But of course, the ARPA funding we've got up to 3 years. And so.
I thought this was CRF. So this
Is this CRF?
CRF.
This is,
CRF.
all right. Oh, this is the CRF. Then we do have to use it.
Catherine Benham from the Joint Fiscal Office.
Yes, thank you. I had one additional point of information, which is that the goal is to use CRF funds as much as we can. There may be pieces that aren't CRF eligible, and we have legislative carry forward. So I just wanted to be clear about that. So the goal is to try to use this 2.5, and I think the other issue is that because the Sergeant at Arms doesn't have, she's still getting estimates, that part of it was trying to figure out what is the right number. And if we're not going to spend a CRF funds, we should give them back and let them be used other places in state government. But where the goal is to try to narrow this down and then figure out what the next steps are.
Materials are gone through the roof in cost. Oh my God, electrical
Yes.
materials, everything is doubling, and labor, their contractors got more work they can handle. So you're going to see some big increases.
Representative Claire.
Will BGS like having some oversight over this project? Curious.
Yes, I mean, they're willing to help us in any way they can. They're kind of limited with their contracting and their resources. They can't get painters, they can't get movers. So I was able to reach out to a contractor that does work here at the State House. It's not, it's someone that's reputable and will be able to handle it.
Does, the words right at the tip of my tongue, and historic preservation,
That would all
do they
be,
have a role to play in this building?
yes, we were conferring with David Sheets as the curator, but they've offered, Buildings and General Services offers historic preservation if we have any questions about that.
Well, that 900,000 may not be enough.
They are also on the advisory
Advisory
committee.
Right.
They're participating in that conversation.
Actually, it's an excellent point that I wanted to make earlier and I forgot. So you would, Senator Benning, just remind people of the stakeholders on that advisory committee, if you would.
Well, we have Chair Emmons, myself, Senator Clarkson, Senator Polina, Senator Hardy, Representative Ansel, Representative Bartholomew, Representative Shaw, Sergeant at Arms Janet Miller, John Dumfill, Friends of the State House, Jennifer Fitch, the Commissioner of BGS, Karen Middleman,
Arts Council.
okay, and Steve Perkins.
Society.
I should add, this discussion is still fluid because we're temporarily moving some folks that we know want to go in there. There are still conversations with others who might want to go in there. And some of what Janet is trying to investigate is, if we have the money and if we have the ability, do we fit up the entire building or just a portion of it or some hybrid model? But this conversation is still very fluid.
Just want to.
Absolutely.
Do you have any idea how many staff ultimately could be working out of that space?
We know right now that HR is moving in there. There are filing cabinets from Ledge Council that will be moving in there. Mike Ferrant, Peggy Delaney, Mariah, and Charlene, that group of 4 as you walk in the door. Charlene and Mariah are moving down there with their affiliated equipment and whatever. We are in a conversation right now. I don't know if anything has come to fruition about that space where Dave Graham usually sits, Friends of the State House, that little corner space. It's been suggested that perhaps Peggy and Mike Ferrant would be in that location with some wall space, but there's other conversations on a longer term. Where, for instance, is Ledge Council going to be? Would JFO move into space there? Everybody is kind of in a state of flux on the long term. We are only handling the 2022 session right now. And the more we focus on that, the less angst there is about what's happening.
I just don't know the buildings. I didn't know. I mean, does it have the capacity or the potential to have?
It does. It has
There.
the potential, actually.
There are 21, I believe, 21 individual offices there, and then there's
Oh.
some larger space that could.
At 2 acres.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 3 floors.
You have the additional problem of the pro tem's office needing to have a shower and adequate space. So we're waiting for that in the short term.
Oh, what?
Showers are overrated.
What are you saying, sir?
I should pause here to say, I really do appreciate the fact that pro tem has graciously allowed agriculture to move into her quarters, because that was a major sticking point for the Senate for a long time. And Senator Starr is very happy, and long-term, if I'm on the committees, we're going to accommodate the pro tem's office in a much better way.
Well, I was happy that my chief of staff, Carolyn, and I both landed at the same place, which is that it made the most sense at this point to have that committee move in there. So I'm excited, and we're very excited about our very intimate space that we're developing.
Are you sharing it, or shall we have to?
No, it's
out.
no, we're moving into the ag room. That'll be the pro tem's office for the upcoming session.
There's less drapes that have to be measured for in that.
Yeah, because I'll just tuck it away. I'll tuck it away, sir. I believe if there are no more questions,
Could I
Catherine Benham, yes.
clarify one more thing? I want to mention that we are using this CRF funding to help pay fee for space up through December, because
Okay.
for 109 and for 204 Aiken. This is one more point of order about the money.
I do have one other question. For those of us who saw so many multiple moves out of National Life, and every time we had a move, there needed to be different furniture and setup. You're saying we're doing this for 1 year, and then we'll consider the long term. I'm sure you've weighed out all of the factor, but my question, sometimes multiple upheavals, multiple moves, multiple acquisition of furniture, as we've experienced it in the executive branch, comes with some problems with something that is deliberately set forth as short term. So I just want to raise that as past experience that we've had. And I'm sure the institutions committees are well aware of all those collateral impacts, so to speak, with multiple moves.
It's a fair statement. There has been angst in the short term. There is angst in the long term, and we're doing our best to muddle through. The only guarantee is there will be decisions made here through this process that everybody in the building will be angry about something. That's all we can guarantee.
And also they'll be thrilled with decisions that were made.
Always on the positive.
Both will be true.
Oh, we all shall be winners.
We all shall be winners, exactly. It all depends how you define winner, right? So if we have no more questions, I'm going to look for a motion.
I'll do it. I'd like to make a motion to allow the Sergeant at Arms to spend up to $750,000 for pre-session facility improvements.
Second.
For a second, Representative Colston, thank you so much. And if there are no further questions or comments, I will call the roll. Representative Colston,
Yes.
Senator Benny,
Yes.
Representative Ansel,
Yes.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Senator Mazza,
Yes.
Representative Leclerc.
Yes.
I also vote in the affirmative. That is 8-0. Thank you so much for all your work, Janet. I know it's been a long haul.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
We'll go make some calls. We'll get.
That's right, exactly.
We're waiting patiently.
Go get the supply chain going. The last thing I want to make sure we get out on time, the last thing I just want to acknowledge, since we haven't met in a while, and I just want to acknowledge that the head of our legislative council, Luke Martland, has resigned and he's moved on to another job. And I just wanted to let folks know that we, well, first of all, we are grateful for his service and all of the work that he did in the building. We have been well served by legislative council under his leadership, and we're grateful. I know that people have had questions about the process going forward for how we will be hiring someone for that position. And just preliminary conversations that I've had with the speaker, we're interested in doing a similar hiring that was done for the joint fiscal position that recently came up. So doing a 360-degree interview within the office, people who work in the office, to get their input on what they're looking for going forward. And I don't have a lot of details for you at this time, but the speaker and I will be getting those to you shortly. And I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you so much.
So